Hey everyone, today I want to talk about how you can start or strengthen your spiritual walk with God based on this one entrepreneurial mindset shift in your thinking. Let's get started. It's a well-known fact that the key indicator of an entrepreneur's success is their ability to think long term. When they start a small business, they do not make their business decisions based on today or tomorrow. They make their business decisions based on what's going to get them to their goals 5 years from now. They make those decisions based on what they want the company to look like in the future rather than what the company's going to look like tomorrow when I make this choice. It is this exact principle that will lead to spiritual success or could lead to spiritual success in your walk with God. Follow me. There's a couple of successful entrepreneurs that said this. George Will said leadership is, among other things, the ability to inflict pain and get away with it. Short-term pain for long-term gain. And Eldon Henderson said almost the same thing in a different way when he said, ignoring the facts for short-term gains will always lead to long-term pain. So, when you take a small hit of a short-term pain today, it's for the long-term gain 5 years from now. It's an entrepreneurial mindset. And when you ignore the facts of where you want to be in 5 years to take the short-term gain for tomorrow, you're ultimately leading yourself towards a long-term pain. So you're probably thinking, where in the world is she going with this, and how does this connect to my spiritual walk with God? Well, the longest term mindset you can have is eternity. In retrospect, you may live for 70, 80, 90 years. But when you compare 90 years to eternity, it's definitely a short-term gain. So every day of your life, when you make choices that are short-term gains, that are just to help you to live for yourself, to live for your flesh, to live for your desires, it ultimately points you towards a long-term pain. Eternity can be a long-term time to have to be in pain because of the short-term gains you had while you were here on this earth. So when we apply this concept of a long-term gain to the longest term you can think about, that is your eternity. And you think, how am I going to live my life today so that when I get to eternity, I have gains. I have rewards, as the Bible calls them. I have a crown when I stand before God. That means you're going to begin to be willing to, as the Bible says, count the cost, die to your flesh, and make choices based on the will of God for your life more than the choices based on the will of yourself for your life. I know for a lot of people this seems like a completely backwards concept. You think, how am I ever going to get ahead if I'm always thinking about someone else or something else and never putting myself first. And that's not exactly what I'm telling you. What I am telling you is to put yourself first so that your long-term success, long-term gains will be won for eternity by living a life here every day, making your choices by your long-term destination instead of your short-term. It's in Ecclesiastes 7 that it says finishing is better than starting. It's in Luke 15, the 28th chapter, the 28th verse, that it says, "But don't begin until you count the cost. For who would begin construction of a building without first calculating the cost to see if there is enough money to finish it? Otherwise, you might complete only the foundation before running out of money, and then everyone would laugh at you. They would say, 'There's the person who started the building and couldn't afford to finish it.'" See, the very concept of the entrepreneur's mind is first found in the Bible. The Bible tells us all over the place to think about the long term first and make your decisions by that. Abraham himself is an entrepreneur. He got a word from God that said, one day it's going to look like this if you'll make this choice today. And now to this day, he is known as the father of an entire nation. He's actually the father of two entire nations, one through his oldest son and one through his youngest son, because of an entrepreneurial decision he made, or an entrepreneurial mindset he had, when God came to him and said, one day it'll look like this if you'll make this choice. And instead of denying that voice and that promise of one day to live for today, he made the choice to live for the one day and respond to the voice today, to respond to the promise God had given him today. You see, the time we have here on this earth is only a speck in the whole retrospect of time. And that small speck and how you live it can lead to a long-term pain or a long-term gain when you get to eternity. So by applying this entrepreneurial mindset to your daily choices of how you live your life, you can ultimately determine your own eternity. You, my friend, can live one day in such an eternal gain and blessing and reward and inheritance by the life you live today because of the promise God has given you in His Word, if you hear the one day and make your decision today.